Hi, folks. This is Rhee with the Paw Print Animal Rescue Podcast. Today is Monday, October 2nd, and we are still dealing with the tragedy in Las Vegas, the largest number of deaths as a result of shooting here in the U.S. As you might be seeing in the news, a lot of folks are stepping up in Las Vegas and donating blood. If you'd like to help out, what I might recommend is donating blood over the next few weeks and months. We don't all have to donate blood today, but if we do spread it out and keep to a schedule of donating blood regularly every few months, we'll hopefully help our local blood supply wherever you live to stay fresh and plentiful in the case of tragedies like this. We hope you and your loved ones are safe. We mourn for those lost. Thanks for listening. This is Paw Print, an animal rescue community. Episode 143. I'm Rhee, and today we have guest host, Melinda Lee. Hi, Melinda.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Good. Well, we're excited to have you on, and I think you and I can both say we're pretty pumped up for our guest today, Peter Zheutlin, author Peter Zheutlin. We both got a chance to read Rescued, his new book, which launches this Tuesday, October 3rd. Any initial thoughts, Melinda, on Peter's book?
I found it really funny that I could relate to so many of the little, scenarios or incidents that him and other people that he's interviewed have experienced with their dogs. Yeah, I found myself giggling, crying, and it was very touching. It was like reading a memoir.
Yeah, I would say I was surprised. The emotional roller coaster, right?
Absolutely. It kind of starts from the way that he structured the book. It was a lot like taking you through the journey of what it would be like from adoption to the Rainbow Bridge, I guess.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your own dog? Sounds like you're going through some things with your own dog, Shea.
So today we're going to go to a veterinary specialist. She had CCL surgery because she tore her ligament back in February. So the surgery was back in February. And now we're just going to get started with rehab. But otherwise, she's doing great. She's 2 years old, and I think she's slowing down a little bit, which is just a sign of maturing to adulthood.
Well, thanks for sharing about Shea, and I'm sure we will speak to Peter about his. It's amazing. He now has 3 dogs. He started with 1, Albie, and now he has 2 more additions, which he, of course, updates us in his book. So it'll be interesting to see how his own rescue journey has gone.
It's very heartening to hear how at first he was completely reluctant to having any dogs, and now he's got 3.
Absolutely. Well, if you want to hear more about Peter Zheutlin and his new book, Rescued, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/143.
From the time you start working on a book, it's about 2 years until it gets launched into the world. And not that I've ever been pregnant, but it feels like a 2-year pregnancy, and you finally deliver. It's very exciting.
I'm going to dive right into a quote from the book that really stood out to me. Perspective is a close cousin to humility. Do you ever look back and wish you had adopted a dog sooner?
Oh, that's a great question. In some ways, I think we do things when we're ready.
Right.
For whatever reason, I put it off for so many years, despite the pleas of my wife and my kids, maybe because I was afraid I'd be overwhelmed. In some ways I do. I think, all this love that floats around the house with the dogs would have been great to enjoy. But for me, it just felt like the right time when the kids were, the last of our boys was about to go off to college and we were about to become empty nesters. So I don't really sit around and regret it. I think I would have loved having a dog sooner in our life, but I think it was the right time for us. I did have a dog growing up, so this wasn't my first ever experience, though.
Yeah, and I think sometimes us in rescue, we say not to rush into getting a dog when you're not ready. So
I think that's absolutely critical. People often, I think, underestimate what's involved in living with any dog, rescue or otherwise. Mm-hmm. And it's a big commitment. It's not, it's easy to idealize it. And I talk in the book about, thinking of life with a dog as one hallmark moment after another, but that's not the reality. Mm-hmm. So you really have to be ready to make a commitment of many years to to a dog. You should not make the decision lightly.
It's kind of like a preview to having a child. And the response, it's a great way for someone to, in my opinion, it's a great way for someone to learn the responsibilities of life, caring for another being. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I absolutely agree.
Well, I think in our case, actually, Melinda, it was a little bit the opposite, since we already had two kids that were almost grown. I think the kids prepared us for having dogs rather than the other way around. And, it's interesting in many ways, of course, the relationship with the dogs is so much simpler. They don't take the car and crash it. They don't experiment with drugs. They don't borrow money. So, and they don't require college tuition payments. So in many ways, I think our kids laid the groundwork for us for having dogs.
Yeah. Well, you said they don't borrow money. I beg to differ. I think you wrote about a dog that actually chewed up some dollar bills.
They don't borrow. They don't ask for money. They do involve some expenditures for sure. And that is something else people have to think about. There are vet bills, and we have pet insurance. We have 3 rescue dogs now, and so we pay a monthly premium that's not insignificant. It is a real commitment, but it's worth every bit of it.
I'm a huge proponent of pet insurance, and this kind of leads me to my next question is, now that, let's say, someone reading your book is convinced that they're ready to adopt a rescue, do you have any recommendations of resources or websites or books for anyone?
Well, actually, in the back of my last book, Rescue Road, I did offer a few pages of advice on this very question, because, just the same way that you wouldn't hire a contractor or a lawyer or go to a doctor without asking people for references or for recommendations, the same applies here. You should talk to people who adopted a dog, talk to veterinarians, and get recommendations for reputable rescue organizations, because they're not all created equal. We did that. We got a recommendation for a group called Labs for Rescue in Connecticut when we were looking for our first dog, and they came highly recommended, and that was important. I think you've got to use a lot of common sense, and you have to be prepared. One sign that you have a good rescue group that you're working with is that they're going to check you out. They're not just going to hand a dog to anyone. So you should welcome the idea that they want to call your references, that they may want to come to your house, as they did in our case, and have a home visit to make sure that we and our house were suitable for a dog. Just use the same kind of common sense that you would when undertaking any other endeavor. Ask around, get advice, get recommendations.
Thank you for that, because I think more and more people in the rescue community, the veterinary community, dog trainers and animal behaviorists are bringing a lot of emphasis to what you just said.
Yeah, and they're good people to ask.
I thought it was wonderful, the collection of people that you interviewed for your book. How did you decide on who to contact and include in your book?
Well, I reached out mainly on social media in various Facebook groups that I'm a part of. People that I know have rescue dogs. Not that I necessarily knew them personally. That was one way. 2 of the people I profiled in the book, actually, I initially met because they came to hear me speak about my previous book, Rescue Road. One of them is this young girl. She's now 10, named Tegan Sparhawk, who rescues potcakes from the Bahamas. Mm-hmm. She became a part of the book, and one evening I was giving a book talk, and a woman came in a wheelchair with her service dog named Ricky. Her name is Melinda Lee, and she and I ended up having coffee because I was interested in hearing about her experience with Ricky, and she became a part of the book. Sometimes it was just a little bit of word of mouth. I can't even recall, for example, how this man in Florida who was finishing up a 15-year prison sentence and raising a dog in prison for adoption, in which he ended up adopting himself. I don't even recall how he came to me. And in one case, I actually had read a story about a fellow named Ron Stanley who plays for the Baltimore Ravens, and read a story about his adoption of a dog from a shelter in Baltimore. And I ended up interviewing him for the book as well. So it was a bit of a mixture. Some of it was word of mouth, some social media, some people I just sort of heard about.
It's pretty interesting because everyone's story I can sort of relate to, either with my own dog or with friends talking about their own dogs, and with almost every I guess every story there was this deep element of love for their dogs.
What you realize as you talk to people is that, first of all, there's a certain commonality to the experience. Everybody's sharing kind of the same emotions, even if the details are a little bit different. One of the things that I was struck by when we adopted Albie is how unprepared I was for how deeply I would love him. I thought, great, we're going to get a dog. My wife had been pushing for it. The kids wanted a dog. But I really didn't expect it to turn into such an emotional experience. And I think that part of that is because he's a rescue dog. I mean, look, all dogs, wherever they come from, they will love you and you will love them. And it can be a great experience. But I think when you have a dog that comes into your life after being thrown away or abandoned or has been lost or abused, whatever, tale of sorrow has led them into a situation where they need to find a home, just deepens the experience. I look at our dogs, sort of sleeping comfortably on a sofa or in our bed, really at peace, and think about how little peace they had in their lives before. And to me, that just makes the bond all that much tighter. It makes the feeling of, just wanting to right all the wrongs in their world all the stronger. As I said, I think any dog can, you can form a great bond with any dog. And I don't want to diminish the experience that other people are having, but rescuing a dog is saving a life. And that means a lot. And it adds a lot of meaning to the experience.
And you talk pretty in depth about just this development of love with these dogs, and sometimes unintentionally or unexpectedly. I recently read an article in the New York Times by Dr. Gregory Burns, who's a neuroscientist at Emory University. Did you read that article?
Oh yeah, and I haven't read his book yet, but I plan to.
Oh, what was your thought on that article?
Well, we should tell people that he's a neuroscientist, I believe, at Emory University in Georgia. Mm-hmm. And he's been doing, putting dogs, training them to be able to sit still through an MRI. And he's really trying to understand whether dogs, he's asking the question is, do our dogs just love us for the treats and the food that we give them? And as I said, I haven't read his book, but his conclusion is they really do love us. Now, that isn't to say that they wouldn't fall in love with anyone who gives them love and a home, but it's not, your dog doesn't just love you because you're giving him food. They really do come in many ways to love you the way we love them.
Yeah, it was very interesting to me because we always, until I read that article, and I think it seems like he's going to be doing a lot more research and experimenting. But we've always, and you talk about this in the book as well, we always kind of guess based on their body language, or we're kind of, I think, anthropomorphizing them, as you said. Yeah. We're almost like guessing what they're feeling, and this brings a little more.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know how they conceptualize certain things. For example, I always have a hard time, and I talk about this in the book, when we go away for any length of time, a couple of days or a week's vacation, and we can't bring the dogs with us, I always find it so hard, but I always wonder, are they really as, because I'm projecting the way I feel onto them, and I'm guilt-ridden, and it's hard to leave them. I don't know how they measure the time. I don't know. I do know that Albie in particular, when he sees the suitcase, he knows that we're leaving, but we do tend to sort of assume we know what they're thinking all the time. And what Dr. Burns is, maybe he's going to prove us right in our assumptions. Look, our dogs do communicate with us, through vocalizations. Albie in the morning, for example, when he wants me to get up and get the day started, there's a very particular low grumble that he emits. It's different from other vocalizations. We can read their body language to some extent. We can look into their eyes. I don't think it's all misguided, but I do sometimes caution people against turning them into little humans, because the downside of that is you've got to let them indulge their dogginess. They have to, you have to allow them to be dogs and not expect them to react as humans or to learn as humans. So the danger in anthropomorphizing them is it can lead to unrealistic expectations about their behavior. Your dog, when you bring a dog in, particularly you bring younger dogs in, puppies or whatever, they're going to chew on the bedspread and they're going to chew up a shoe and they're going to run into the house with muddy paws, and you just can't expect to, admonish them in English or some other language and expect them to get it. So you have to let them be dogs. And I think the most important lesson in the book really is that while to some extent we do train a dog to live with people and to live in a house, but ultimately it's our job to learn to live with them.
I love that, and I completely appreciate that.
Well, we're speaking to New York Times bestselling author Peter Zheutlin with his new book, Rescued, and we're joined by our amazing guest host, Melinda Lee. Peter, just rewind maybe a couple years back. Obviously, before that was really the story of Albie, but just a couple years ago was this story of you and a gentleman by the name of Greg Maley, which developed into your New York Times bestseller, Rescue Road. Could you maybe remind people or catch people up on that journey and obviously how that led to Rescued?
The way this all unfolded is that when we adopted Albie, he came from Louisiana with an outfit called Rescue Road Trips, which is Greg Maley's now nonprofit. And Greg had been transporting rescue dogs from the South to the Northeast for about 10 years at that point. I didn't know who he was. I didn't meet him. But as I started to have all these questions about Albie, where he came from and the whole process of rescue, I didn't really understand how all the players that were involved in getting him from Louisiana up to the Boston area. I decided to contact Greg. I mean, at that point, I knew who he was, but we hadn't met. And I thought that he might be a real window into this entire community, and he was. And so I proposed to Greg that I ride along a little bit with him to write an article, which ended up being published in Parade magazine. And there was such a great response to that article that my wife, Judy, encouraged me to go further with it. And it ended up becoming that book, Rescue Road. And for the book, I actually spent more time, not only with Greg, spending, I made parts of several of his long 4,500 mile odysseys that he makes, by the way, twice a month. I also spent some time in parts of the country where the canine overpopulation problem is particularly severe, particularly in Louisiana, and some time in Houston. And that really was an entire education for me about, why there are so many of these dogs that need homes, where they come from, who it is out there on the ground that's helping save these dogs, locally. And then the whole process of matching these dogs with for what we call forever homes. So, it's an enormous amount of logistics. Everybody does it differently. There's so many different players involved, and, it's not easy to simply describe the process. But I just wanted to know more. If I couldn't know more about Albie per se, about his actual life before he was picked up as a stray, I did want to learn more about why there were so many dogs like Albie. And that's what led me to seek out Greg. And, Greg literally took me inside this world. And that book ended, it told the story of one of Greg's journeys, basically, from his home in Ohio down to the Gulf Coast and back to New England. This is some ground he covers in just 6 days, twice every month. And that book sort of ends with these dogs being delivered into the arms of these families that have been waiting for them. And so this book, the new book, Rescued, kind of picks it up in a way from that point. I then wanted to go on and say, okay, these dogs have arrived in our lives. Now what? What is that experience like? And, we had such a great experience first with Albie and then Selena. She was on Greg's truck that we ended up adopting. And now we have a third rescue, also from Louisiana. We just had so many interesting things to learn and so many great experiences with them and so much joy. And so this book, Rescued, really kind of takes the story from that point of unifying these dogs with their families forward.
With Hurricane Harvey, we actually, on the podcast, we interviewed your old acquaintance, Tom English again.
Yes.
Because of course he lives really like right near the coast. You got to know a lot of these folks, whether it's in Houston, Louisiana, etc. What are your thoughts about Hurricane Harvey and the true disaster that it became in the past month or so?
It's not only Harvey. When you think about these three big storms, and you think about what's happening in Puerto Rico right now, and I was one of those people who tended to assume before I knew anything about rescue that these dogs were all in some ways the victim of some particular, acute crisis. And for example, I can't tell you how many people would ask me, say, how old is he? I'd say he's 2. And this was 2012. He's about 2. And I'd say he's from Louisiana. They say, oh, is he a Katrina dog? Well, Katrina was 2005. He, hadn't been born yet. So to the extent that many people think or about this problem, they tend to associate it with acute crises like hurricanes that, cause all these dogs to become strays. But in fact, this is an ongoing problem. It existed before Katrina. It exists all the time. Well before Hurricane Harvey hit Houston, there were an estimated 1.2 million strays in that city. So it's just simply not the case that these dogs, come to us because of these events. Tom's a great example. I contacted Tom English shortly after the hurricane just to see if he was okay. He lives about 45 minutes southeast of Houston, and he was doing okay, but he made his way, and I think you may have talked to him about this, up to a shelter in Dickinson, Texas, about 5 miles from where he lives. Dickinson's where that iconic photo was taken of these nursing home residents sitting up to their rib cages in water.
Yeah.
Tom, he told me about his work at that shelter. A little dog that came into the shelter was found in a shoebox during the hurricane. A little puppy, very sick with parvovirus, which is very often fatal, and particularly in younger dogs. And he took this dog home, named it Stormy, and nursed Stormy back to health. And Stormy will be probably in a week or so. And when people ask me, well, why a rescue dog, rather than give a list of reasons, tell them stories about dogs like Stormy, otherwise have nowhere to go. Tom and other people I wrote about in Rescue Road who do this incredible work down there. They go to shelters, they make heartbreaking decisions about what dogs they can save and which ones they can't. They see a lot of misery. They experience a lot of heartache and heartbreak every day in the work that they do. And they, most of them are volunteers. And, to me, they're really just incredibly heroic. I don't know how many of us could endure the sadness they see all the time. And the payoff for them, is seeing one of the dogs they've helped to save from a terrible fate, arrive, maybe somewhere here in New England or, Seattle or Colorado, and live a great life with a wonderful family. That's the payoff for them. And for Greg Maley, who drives so many of these dogs north, that's his payoff for all the hard work that he does is, handing these dogs, literally putting them in the arms of their new families. And he does grueling work. It's dirty work. It's exhausting work, but that's the huge payoff.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah. So since you've given us the recap of Rescue Road and we're talking about Rescued, should we expect a third dog-related book from you?
I don't know. I think I may have said everything I have to say about dogs, but you never know. It's possible. I do have an idea. I recently reread John Steinbeck's book, Travels with Charlie. It's written back in, I believe, 1960. You may remember Steinbeck took a cross-country trip with his dog, Charlie, to reacquaint himself with America. And I have had the same idea. I thought I might want to recreate Steinbeck's journey with Albie. That remains to be seen. My wife, Judy, actually enthusiastically supported the idea, which actually got me a little worried because it meant I was going to be away for 5 or 6 weeks. I would have thought she'd have been a little less enthusiastic about it. But
now, if you were to you're recreating it, meaning you would visit all the same exact places.
Might not be exactly the same. Roads have changed. I mean, my idea would be definitely to stick to the back roads, because the idea really would be that it wouldn't so much be a dog book per se, but what I've learned is that having a beautiful dog like Albie is really a way to open conversations with strangers. Mm-hmm. And since really the idea of the book would be to, now that I'm in my mid-60s, sort of reacquaint myself with this country that's changed so much in my lifetime, and just have Albie along sort of as my wingman. It also occurred to me that because dogs age faster than humans, Albie next year will be the human equivalent of probably around my age. And so I thought it might be kind of one last great, hurrah for us aging gentlemen to hit the road and take the great American road trip together.
We know that you have Albie, Selena, and remind me again the name of your third dog.
Our third one is, the full name is Jambalaya. That's partly because she's also from Louisiana, and because my older son, who went to Tulane University in New Orleans, decided she was from Louisiana, she should have a very Louisiana name. We call her Jamba for short, which of course led my other son to call her Jamba Juice, and that's not a plug for a product, but he sometimes goes by that as well. And what's really fascinating, we have 3 dogs here, 3 totally different personalities. Albie is kind of the big goofy guy, a little bit behind the curve sometimes. Selena is a little bit of our kind of our princess, a little bit more aloof. And Jamba is just what I just refer to her as the happiest camper in the camp. One of the things she really loves to do, and this is the time of year for it in New England, is as the leaves fall from the trees, she just loves to chase every single leaf that falls. And I'll tell you, in October, when there are hundreds of them coming down by the minute, she's like a whirling dervish out there just trying to chase down every leaf. I think of her, she looks like a child in a Christmas snow globe, She just delights in everything. So that's our pack, so to speak. The 3 very different personalities.
Now, not to put you on the spot, but is there room for a 4th?
I think we're maxed out. I really do.
Melinda's asking some really hard-hitting questions right now.
Greg Maley actually just, some time ago asked me, is it much difference having 3 than 2? Now, he obviously has more than that, so he knew the answer, but I think I gave him the answer that he was expecting, which is that 3 isn't all that much more work than 2. But in reality, I have to say, where I used to be able to take Albie and Selena out for a walk together, I can't manage the 3 of them. by myself. So it really has changed. We've had to adjust to that. One of us cannot go for a leash walk in the neighborhood with all three of them. That may partly be our own. I mean, I see dog walkers managing 10 dogs, and I think it may be because we are overindulgent dog parents and have not trained them sufficiently to walk, perfectly on a leash. I think Jamba's always got her nose to the ground. She just can't move fast enough. So, it's definitely changed the equation. We're outnumbered. So I think we're maxed out at the moment.
Keyword being at the moment, but the reason why I'm asking, and you answer the question I was thinking of asking, which was, is there a difference between going from having one dog to 2 dogs to 3 dogs? Because we have the one, and I've been kind of, pushing the idea a little bit to my boyfriend about, let's see if we can foster a dog, and then maybe our dog Shea would really like a friend.
Well, it's interesting how you have the same kinds of thoughts about kids and dogs. A lot of us, I think, who had more than one child think, well, we want our kids to go, we want them to go through life with a sibling. It's kind of I don't know why so many of us just seem to feel that way. And I think in the case of Selena, it was because we thought Albie would like to have a canine companion in the house. And, it's really easy to see how people slip into acquiring so many dogs because there's just so much need out there. And you look into these faces and it's like, how do you say no? And that gives you a glimpse, by the way, of what it's like for these people I talked about who walk through shelters filled with wonderful dogs that just want, a pat on the head, and you have these doleful eyes, and you just can't take them all. And, you also have to be careful that you don't take more dogs than you can take care of as if they were the only one. Mm-hmm. That was one of the best. And I think it was actually Tom English when I asked him about this, because he keeps a lot of dogs that are some of them are living in his home, but he's got many other dogs that are being readied for adoption. And we talked about this question of hoarding, which sometimes happens. It's a psychiatric phenomenon. Mm-hmm. And his answer was really good. He said, you can have 1 or 2 dogs and be a hoarder if you're not able to take care of them well. And you can have 10 and you're not if each one of them is getting all the attention and love and care that they need. Mm-hmm. So I think, it's something to think very carefully about. One of the people I write about in the book is a remarkable woman from Vermont named Adrienne Finney. She's from Guilford, Vermont. And she's got a pack of labs called the Guilford Gang. I think there's 10 of them now. One just recently passed away. And I was up, she was on a beautiful farm in southern Vermont. And those dogs, they're like living in dog heaven there. So 10 dogs sounds like a hoarder, but, it's not in that case, because every one of those dogs is living a great life and is well taken care of. So just like we said at the beginning, you kind of know maybe when it's the right time in your life to have a dog. I think it's good to also know your limit with dogs and alcohol.
I'd like to close with this. I've heard many unlikely men referring to themselves as their dog's daddy. So have you gotten there yet?
Okay, well, as you may know, there's an entire chapter, I think, in the,
yes.
in the subject. I used to hear people, refer to themselves as mommy and daddy, and I used to look at them like they were absolutely out of their minds. I never got comfortable, and still don't feel comfortable, referring to myself as their daddy, even though, you play that role. This is where you come up against that dilemma about, anthropomorphizing them. I want to let them be dogs. It just doesn't feel natural to me to refer to myself that way, but I absolutely don't have an issue really anymore with people who do refer to themselves that way. Having these dogs, they are like perpetual 2-year-olds, no matter how old they get chronologically. And, they depend on you for everything. So I understand why it seems natural to some people to do that. I don't have a way of referring myself to them when I talk to them. I don't say, Daddy says time to go outside. I just talked to them.
Thanks.
Well, Peter, tell us a little bit about your launch, how to find your book, and if you have any kind of bookstore stops planned.
Well, yeah, I mean, the book is available, from any of the online retailers, but I always, and I understand, I buy books from online retailers at times too, but I also always want to encourage people to support your local bookseller, the local independent bookseller that adds so much to your community. If they don't have it, they can get it for you. And I do have an author website with all the speaking dates, and that's peterzheutlin.com, peterzheutlin.com. Not easy to get if you don't spell it. So all the speaking dates are up there, and I update it whenever a new one is booked. Most of the dates that have been scheduled so far are in New England, but I'll be in Virginia and in Maryland in November. So check the website. It's the best way to do it.
Okay, great. Last question for me, which is, now that you've learned so much, you've gotten this multi-year crash course in animal rescue. If you did have that magic wand and could change something about animal rescue, what do you think that would be?
There's unfortunately, and maybe this is human nature. There are a lot of politics in rescue, and I don't go into this because it's not something I want to focus on the good part of it. Everyone, there are a lot of disagreements about the best way to do things, and certain issues come up, and I'd like to see it probably become a little less contentious among some of the folks involved. But I'd also just want more people to be aware of the enormous need that's out there. So if you're thinking of getting a dog, at least consider a rescue dog, and don't believe the myths that these rescue dogs are somehow damaged goods. A good rescue organization is going to carefully screen the dogs that they put up for adoption. Now, I'm a father of 2 boys. There are no guarantees when you have kids. There are no guarantees when you get a dog, whether you get it from a breeder or a rescue. But don't discount rescue dogs. In the vast majority of cases, people who take a rescue dog into their home have an absolutely fantastic experience, and a dog that really seems to appreciate having that second chance.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Anything else that you'd like to share with us as we look forward to your upcoming launch of Rescued?
If you do decide to consider a rescue dog, and this isn't something everybody can do, but give some consideration to adopting a senior dog. And that's, an older dog. Usually it means a dog that's 6 years old or more. And the reason is this, puppies are easy to find homes for. It's much harder to find homes for these older dogs, many of which are so deserving. And there's some stories in the book that are both heartbreaking and heartwarming. One in particular about an Ohio couple that adopted Jake, who was a lab that had lived 10 years of his life on a chain outdoors in all kinds of weather in Ohio. And he was only with him for a matter of months before he died, but they gave him such a gift. This is a dog that, but for them, the Schultz family, that dog never would have enjoyed a walk by a stream or the chance to lie down on a lawn. And it was heartbreaking for them to have him for such a short time. And I think that's one of the reasons people are reluctant to adopt a senior dog, but it means so much, to just give that dog a taste of a good life. And they a friend of theirs said, you taught Jake what heaven would be like. And I would just urge people to consider that, and a lot of people, don't want to adopt a puppy because they don't want to go through that, having to housebreak a puppy and all the chewing and, just all the things that go along with that. But if you're not interested in a puppy, consider an older dog. The shortened time, the trade-off will be well worth it.
We just want to say thank you to Peter Zheutlin for sharing his story. Rescued, his new book, is out on Tuesday, October 3rd. Find it at your local bookstore or online. So, Melinda, how'd you feel about the interview?
It was great. It was very nice talking to Peter, and he made some excellent points, which he emphasized a lot of points which a lot of rescues are talking about now. Like I said, rescues, dog trainers, animal behaviorists, they're all talking about how we can all be a little kinder to each other and also a little kinder to our dogs and not expect too much of them, or not so much too much, but don't expect human characteristics of them.
How do you think it changes your thinking? Obviously, your dog Shea is on the mend medically. Does it change your thinking in potentially looking at a second animal?
Oh, it actually puts more. It actually fuels that desire even more. It's always been there, and now I think we're a little closer. It's not so much me. Yeah.
Pouring a little fuel on the fire, as they say.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, we just want to say thank you to Melinda Lee for being such a wonderful guest co-host. We'll have to have you back again.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. It was great talking to you.
You can listen to more episodes of Paw Print on your favorite podcast app, like Apple Podcasts or SoundCloud. Make sure to type Paw Print Animal Rescue and hit the subscribe button to get the latest episodes immediately. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can look us up. This is Paw Print, all one word. And finally, you spread a positive message of love and peace by saving an animal. Have a great day, everyone, and see you next time on Paw Print.
Paw Print is a production of EVER Education.
You can't handle the truth.